Doesn't go ahead.
No, Chad. Yeah. So this is Paul Johnson, and he's going to give you guys a general introduction to farming and agriculture. Paul is incredibly social-minded. He works in all kinds of capacities within the community and has done for years. And he's also going to help us out tomorrow by leading us around the Hinckley area and looking at some things. So thank you very much for coming, Paul.
Alrighty. How do we advance this?
Yeah, I'm gonna. That's just a pointer, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I hadn't got that set up yet.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here and get to give you a little bit of a slight introduction of some of the things we'll see tomorrow, and maybe when we get out in the field tomorrow, you'll have some more questions, and there'll be other of the operators that will be there that will be able to answer some of the questions for you.
There you go.
I was a little disappointed with a little arrow to the right.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Yeah, and there is a pointer on the very front of that, but it's hard because you.
Oh,
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah.
That'll
it
do
is-
it.
yeah.
If I can figure out how to move a picture and run the pointer at the same time, we'll be in good shape. I was a little disappointed though when Neville said that there was no tacos tonight. So we're really counting on the tacos. Anyway, I'm in the custom alfalfa farming business, and that's what we'll be visiting tomorrow. My work is harvesting and managing fields for dairies in the Hinckley area. I'm working with 3 different dairy entities, actually 2 operating dairies and 1 retired dairyman who has an alfalfa field. And we'll go on those sites and take a look at it. But this set of slides I have here was primarily designed that I take it to some of the schools and share with the students what we do in the field. So, I thought it would be a good way to get a little orientation as to what we're looking at tomorrow. And we'll try to bring out some of the topics that you guys are more concerned about than just the basics of farming. Of course, what are alfalfa and forages? Primarily they're feed for animals, horses, goats, cows, and chickens, and sheep. And the types of forages we have grains, and we have alfalfa, we have the sorghums that include Sudan grasses, and now we are working in the last few years with a new variety of ryegrass, an Italian ryegrass, which has met with some success. Some of the farmers have found this new ryegrass is a good high nutrition feed that actually melts well. This year we put in 1 small field and mixed it with grain, and we're very surprised when we took it to the field operators' animals. The horses absolutely loved it, walked away from alfalfa to eat a ryegrass. That never happens with our grain hay. If we put alfalfa out and grain hay, which would be oats, barley, wheat mixes, they always prefer the alfalfa. So we're real interested to see where we're going with that. The grain hays are mostly given to horses and non-milking cows, or as we call them, dry cows. And you'll get to see the dry cows tomorrow when we visit there. Alfalfa primarily is given to dairy cows and is also given to horses, sheep, goats. It's baled generally. It can be bagged, and at one point we had a bagging operation in Hinckley, but that's not an operation this year, so we won't be able to take a look at that, but we have some slides here. The basic process of farming. We start out, we get a field. Yes?
When you say dry cows, is that because they're pregnant?
Yes. And they've stopped milking them, and they're taking their vacation to finish gestation period and have their calf. And this is the process we go through, and we'll fertilize the ground. And there's a lot that we'll talk about in fertilizing. The word stewards came up in your summary thing earlier, and we all want to be good stewards of the ground, and perhaps some of us in the agricultural industry have not been as good as stewards when it comes to the use of manures for fertilizers. In the Central Valley, we now have a lot of nitrification that's come from two sources, and one is flood irrigation and also a use of a lot of the nitrogen fertilizers and manures, and it's caused a problem. Now all of the agricultural community is getting a lot of heat from the water quality control boards as to how we're going to continue with this. They're not going to tolerate it. We're under no regulations right now on what we can fertilize and cannot fertilize with, but I'm afraid that's going to change. We won't have carte blanche. In the desert, this is not a predominant problem within the cropping areas. In the dairy areas, it is a bit of a problem, and that's something that we'll look at in the dairies tomorrow. So back to our process of farming. Then we get the field tilled and ready, and that's another thing we'll talk about tomorrow, is types of tillage and no-till, and the options of doing no-till versus till. That gets back to our sustainability. And this is something that we'll talk about. We're going to look at some fields where there were some no-till practices, and we'll talk about the success and the failure of trying to implement the no-till practices. Irrigation. This is a very critical item right here. Down on the bottom left, we have a small example of flood irrigation. They have checks and borders, and the area would be about this wide with just a border on each side, flood water down the middle, and that's what I mentioned just a bit earlier. Flood irrigation can be problematic if you don't control your tailwaters and you apply fertilizers. It goes into the water, goes to the tailwater, goes back into the ground. We've improved about 25, 30 years ago the side roll irrigation systems that you see here with impact sprinklers took the place of the flood beds. We cut down on the amount of water we used, and we increased our efficiency in irrigation, and we got more crop for the water that we produced. Now we've gone one step farther ahead, and we're now in center pivot systems, low pressure systems, takes less energy, and we've cut the water consumption again, and at the same time we've found more increases in crop per acre and less water use. And we will be able to look at I believe we'll see one side roll system that's not that's in the field, but it's not being used right now. They're in a rotation, and then we'll be looking at the center pivot systems. Harvesting. We go into the field, we get a crop up, we get it grown, we go in with a swather, we cut hay, we put it in the windrow. Tomorrow, we either will see some bales in the field, hopefully, or some windrows of alfalfas being harvested. And we'll be looking at other harvest methods that we use around the dairies where the crop is being raised right adjacent to the point where it's consumed. After we swath, we go through and we rake the hay. We'll put 2 rows into one and get it to cure just a little faster and get it off of the field. Then we go into the process of baling it. We have the options today that we can use round balers, and this is a round baler here, and a big roll will come out the back. I'm sure you've seen pictures of those. That's primarily used in the areas that have more rainfall in the Midwest, and they have problems getting the hay dried down, and the round bales will tolerate more moisture without spoilage. Then we have the conventional sized bales. These are the smaller bales. You'll see some more pictures of those. And that's what is used today, sold to feed stores, sold to the dairies. But becoming more popular are the large bales. This is probably a 4x4, we call it a 1-ton bale. And of course, as we go through these steps, it requires less, or we have to have less and less moisture. If we put as much moisture in this big bale as goes in a round bale, it'd probably catch on fire. Then you'd burn the stack down. Here's another type of baler, self-propelled balers, pulled balers. These are just some of the types that we work with. after the hay's baled, we go in the field, we have automatic harrow beds, and they'll pick up the bales. This is an example of the small bales being picked up. And if conditions are right, perhaps tomorrow we'll get to see one of these machines picking up large bales and taking them out of the field. We have a field that's coming up, and it'll either bale tomorrow or the next day. If it's tomorrow, we may have the opportunity to see that. There's the wagon unloading in the field. There's another type of wagon that takes hay from the field, unloading. It picks up with the claw and puts it in the stack. And of course, then the hay is trucked to the markets. And that's an additional advantage of the square bales, is they can be hauled farther. The round bales, you've limited your market, and of course, the sustainability and the value of the crop is down. If you can only sell it to your neighbors and people that live within 5 miles of you, then you won't be able to realize the value out of it that we can out of the hay here. There's other ways to harvest. We go in the field with a chopper and chop the hay and blow it into a truck. You can see it blowing it across right here. And this is what we call a green chop. At that point, the green chop, in this case, is going into a special machine, being pushed into a bag. And you can see part of the bag there. It's like a long, giant sausage. It goes through a curing process, and after 60 days, it does a bit of a fermentation, and it comes out with a real sweet molasses smell, and it's a very, very good feed, and it's fed to the animals. Again, we did have one of those out in the Hinckley area, but this year it's not in operation, so we won't be able to see that phase. The other thing is green chopping, and here they're green chopping a cornfield, and this is probably flail more, and it'll chop the hay, and it'll put it into a wagon like this, or this wagon here. And this picture here is actually the dairy we'll visit tomorrow. Both of these are, and they're feeding the green chop hay right here along the main. So where does our food come from? They raise wheat, we harvest it, take the grain out, ground, make bread. Fruits and vegetables, and we won't see very many of these crops tomorrow. We'll be looking pretty much at just the feed stuff that's given to the animals. And of course, we raise the hay, give it to the cow, we get milk. The mixed rations, we'll look at that tomorrow. We'll see a feed truck like this. We'll see a commodity barn like this one. We're going to look at these ingredients that go in that are fed to the cows, and we'll take a quick look at that and get to visit with us on that part of the operation. It's fed. There's the mangers. There's where the cows go and get to eat the mixed ration. And of course, this is about opportunities in agriculture and things to do, and this is things that you folks should look at, the sustainability and looking at where we want to go. And these are areas we need people out in the field with the insight as to what direction agriculture needs to go to do the best job that it can do. We need crop advisors, pest control advisors, entity representatives, commodity marketing people, researchers, and people that will even work in enforcement. And some of the other things that are grown around the desert here is we have alfalfa is primarily, onions are grown in the Lancaster area. We have nuts grown out in Newberry Springs from trees. Some fruit over in the Pear Blossom area. Carrots are grown. Not too many potatoes here, but at one time in the 50s, our last century of course, there was hundreds and hundreds of acres of potatoes produced right here along the Mojave River. And of course our grain hay. So that kind of summarizes it, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Any questions about any of this? Yes.
So you're a crop advisor, or?
No, I am a custom alfalfa farmer.
So you actually are on field farming too?
Right.
What do you guys do for rotation crops or alternate cropping when you're not running alfalfa in the field?
Primarily, our rotation that we use is an alfalfa stand will be planted, and we usually pencil it to make it 5 years if it's baled. If it's green chopped or bagged, that will probably be reduced to 3 years. And so the same stand will be farmed for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, we'll rotate and usually go 1 year into a grain hay, and perhaps followed by a sorghum, and then back into alfalfa. We have, in the desert, we have some special, well, the whole state has the same problem now, with water. And so in some of the farming areas, their rotation years are longer because they just don't have enough water to go right back to the alfalfa. So they'll raise an alternate crop. And we're all looking for alternate crops that we can still keep the ground active and maintain it and stay within water budgets. Yes?
What is the reason on the round bales why you can't sell them far away, you can only sell
Well,
locally?
because they're large and bulky and they're expensive to transport.
Okay.
And so you can't get very many tons on a truck, and so the freight gets really expensive.
Okay.
How many head of cow do you have out there?
They're mostly Holsteins, and they're all for milk, and they do have some Angus into their first time cows where it's a mix that will come out, but primarily the Holsteins are the ones that are making all the milk. Yes.
For the irrigation system that you use, do
I beg
you
your pardon?
for the irrigation system that you use, do you prefer that center pivot system that you was talking about, or do you like
Oh,
use a wide
absolutely.
variety?
It's the only way to go. Flood irrigation requires too much land preparation, requires too much water, and it's gone. It just doesn't work at all in the desert anymore. We're probably standing right now on an old alfalfa field right here that was flood irrigated on a ranch called the Kalin Ranch in the 50s. And this whole flat bottom area here at BBC were flood fields. They produced a lot of hay. It worked back then. Neville mentioned the Resource Conservation District, and to show you how things evolve and how we have to move ahead. When they organized the Resource Conservation District, it was during the Dust Bowl days, and you had to have a local entity request the Federal Soil Conservation Service come in to assist you. So under Division 9 of the Public Resources Code, the authority to have a resource conservation district for a specific area was written into law. So they did that some 70 years ago. And what was the first thing they did? Well, we need to do a better job of farming, and so we're going to build reservoirs, and the Resource Conservation District with the advice of the Soil Conservation Service, which is now Natural Resource Conservation Service, went out and designed reservoirs and flood systems and helped the people put them in. So they expanded, and this very well could have been one of those projects on this ranch. And they got a lot of the desert and into flood irrigation. In the 50s and 60s, they began to realize the rainbird sprinkler was a more efficient way to irrigate. So then they came in and they designed pressure systems, underground systems, and helped the people begin to move away from the flood system to the impact system of sprinklers. Today, we've moved away from those systems and we're using the center pivot systems. Now we're looking at different ways to nozzle, different pressures to operate at, lower, different ways to apply it so that we can make that more efficient.
Do you ever use a drip irrigation system? Because they say that
Sub-drip irrigation system, you'll get to see some of that tomorrow. And it doesn't work very well. It's a struggle. When it comes time to do your rotation, you lose your irrigation system. It takes it out. The other struggle is if things break underground, you don't know it, and suddenly you've got dry spots in your field. The other problem is you can't start a crop with water under the ground. It's got to be on top of the ground. And once you get a root system down, then the drip systems begin to work. And so they're still working with them. And we'll see one that PG&E has installed, and they're raising some grass with it. And they had special reasons that they attempted that, but they have actually abandoned that and gone to a new drip on top of the ground system operated on a center pivot. And we will get to see that tomorrow, I'm sure. That'll be part of your PG&E portion, and we'll all get to take a look at that. And you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, are all those dairies, are those all parlors?
Are they all what?
Parlors?
Oh, yeah, they're all automatic barns where they come in, they wash them, bring them in, and they don't feed them inside the milk barn like they did in the old days. And they just bring them in, and within 3 to 5 minutes, the cow has been milked. They clean it, milk it, and you'll get to see how it's all done. But yeah, that's the way all the milk barns work.
They have like 1,000 head, right?
Yeah, we've got dairies out there that run from 2,000 to 4,000 head of cows.
Are any hormones used to aid with milk production?
Not now. Monsanto came out with, I can't even tell you what it was, with a product that they had, and that didn't work, and so it's pretty well gone. Nobody uses it anymore. What they really emphasize is nutritional values. They keep the nutritionists real busy. What do we have available to feed the cows this time of year? And the nutritionist writes up recipes for them to give them the most bang for the buck. And that's how they keep the cows moving.
I think the cool thing is you guys will, unless you have a really quick, we'll have Paul tomorrow for a few hours, and we'll put this whole thing in context, like irrigation. One of the big problems is water, and we're going to look at how we can do sustainable practices with water. We're going